Whoa, the music just stopped. I didn't have any fade out. Welcome, everyone, to Friday 15 with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoar, and the band just shut off. Andy, sorry about that. Welcome to Friday 15, another fun week of great content about B2B e-commerce.
Yeah, and apparently it's a whiteout Friday because we're both wearing white here.
That's right. Yep. And by the way, I lost the fight with a sailboat. In case anyone's wondering who's watching this, you can see I have a nice bandage on my nose. I tipped a sailboat over last week while I was racing it and banged my nose. Oh,
Yeah.
oh well.
High
Anyhow,
class problems, Brian. Was
I
that when
know.
you were on your yacht? Was that
Yeah,
when the partner tripped?
yeah, that
What
was
was
my yacht. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. I wish. No, it's a 16-foot sailboat, Andy. It's very small, but it's very fast and very fun and very wet. But anyhow, and apparently a little risky. Well, welcome everyone to Friday 15. We've got some great stuff to share with you today. Let's start with some breaking news. Everyone, Andy, did you see this? Well, it just keeps on going. It just keeps on giving this thing. Home Depot heads deeper into building supply business with $5 billion acquisition of GMS. GMS is a key distributor of drywall, ceilings, and frame fittings and other specialty building products, offering its offerings and customer base. You might remember, Andy, last year SRS, and we talked about this. SRS is another distributor that Home Depot bought. Home Depot is buying everybody. The CEO of SRS, who runs the B2B side of this now for Home Depot, said the combination of GMS and SRS will provide the residential and commercial pro consumer with more fulfillment and service options than ever before. Andy, what's your take on this?
Well, the more acquisitions you see like this, you mentioned, SRS acquisition, which was $18 billion. Lowe's did one earlier this year with a company called ADG for $1.3 billion. Everybody's getting into the pro side of the B2B side of the business, not necessarily the enterprise stuff, but the prosumer. And it makes you wonder, if you step back for a second, why the hell didn't they do this sooner? I mean, I looked up the numbers, and according to the sources I've found, Home Depot is 45% B2B right now, 55% B2C. So it's almost even.
Wow.
And Lowe's apparently is like 30% B2B and 70% B2C. But, I think what they're finding is that B2B is a lot more reliable. The customers are more consistent. They negotiate pricing less. It's less competitive. Customers are more, I think I said, more loyal.
Right.
I think they've always been scared away from B2B because it wasn't something they knew well. And they were worried about the higher demands for customer service and fulfillment and some of the things that B2B companies want. But by the same token, I think they're now seeing that they understand maybe how to do a digital customer experience better than your average B2B company does. And they're thinking, wait a minute, we bring that to the table. And I think if we acquire companies, they bring the domain expertise. So 1 and 1 could equal 5. But yeah, I think if you look at the numbers, it makes you wonder why they didn't do this sooner. I mean, it's a better quality of customer.
Well, I think there's a lot of synergy on the digital side too. I mean, Home Depot has been a leader on the consumer side of retail e-commerce for a long time. They have deep capabilities there. They understand omni-channel e-commerce. They understand buy online, pick up in store. How to create seamless cross-channel experiences. Bringing all that stuff to distribution, which lags in a lot of those areas, is I think also another important synergy here. So I think we're going to see more of this stuff where it makes sense. Big retailers buying into B2B, again, where it makes sense. It does make sense for them because they serve contractors.
One other quick point too is, I think another thing that scared them away was the SKUs, the catalog. What kind of products do we need to stock? What's the short tail? What's the long tail?
Sure.
But with marketplaces now, and with drop shipping, and even with the presence of, God forbid, Amazon and what they're doing now with Amazon fulfillment, et cetera, that makes it a lot easier. We don't actually have to have all that stuff in your warehouse. So I think the confluence of these things has made B2C companies that serve prosumers a lot more interested in B2B. And again, why didn't they do this sooner? But maybe the time has finally come.
Yeah, clearly. Well, good stuff. We'll continue to follow Home Depot because they seem to be leading the charge here on the retail side, moving into B2B. So today, Andy, our topic is all about, is B2B e-commerce understaffed? This is a topic that's come up quite a bit, and we hear it. We've heard it for years from B2B leaders that, hey, I don't have enough people to do what I need to do. So, and here's a couple of interesting statistics. This is some interesting data here from Forrester Research, which found that B2C retailers average one full-time employee per every 1.5 to 4 million in e-commerce sales. Meanwhile, Andy, B2B enterprises average one full-time employee for every 10 to 25 million in e-commerce sales. My goodness, what a difference that is. I mean, just in terms of the the scale of the business. So you'll have B2B e-commerce businesses, doing $1 billion with a very small team versus B2C. And when we look at a B2C organization, a typical $100 million online retail, and I've run businesses like this at this size, and I've seen and hired and built staffs that are similar to what we're showing here on the screen, and I'll verbalize it for people who are listening on our podcast. So you typically have, a couple people in e-com leadership and strategy. You'll have 5 to 10 people in digital marketing, SEO, paid media, email, etc. You'll have 4 to 6 web merchants and content. I mean, I'm thinking back about my teams when I was at PacSun and Harbor Freight and the consumer businesses, and this is very true. This is what we saw. I had that many merchants. UI, UX, web development might have 4 to 8 people. E-commerce operations, 5 to 10 people. This is logistics, fulfillment, customer service, 3 to 8 people. Analytics and performance, 2 to 5 people. Product site management, like, sort of your BAs, your business analysts, and site, we call them product owners, another 2 to 4 people. I've got 60 people in my B2C e-commerce, department at a retailer doing 100 million in sales. Show me a B2B company that has that kind of a staff. I think there are some, but the majority of them don't have anything close to that. What's your take?
Yeah, if you had 60, B2B is going to have 16. It was making me laugh as you were describing this because, one, I know how many of these functions B2B companies don't even have, right? Like merchants. I know we're going to talk about that in a moment. A lot of B2B companies don't even have merchants. The other thing that occurred to me as you were reading through this was, I think a lot of B2B companies start with the proposition that it's similar to their offline sales operation. And they assign the ratios based on the number of salespeople handling that similar number of customers or revenue. I guarantee you that's where that came from. So really, it's a function of where you start. And I think B2B companies started with how much revenue, how many customers do our salespeople handle? Let's just use that proportion for our digital operation. I'm laughing because that's absolutely insane, but that explains some of that. Whereas the B2C companies did not approach it the same way because they didn't have salespeople to begin with. The equivalent would be how many people do we have in a store, but nobody would assume that for a website.
Well, I think it speaks to the thinking, and we'll get into that a little bit, but the thinking of B2B companies. So we asked our audience on LinkedIn, our community on LinkedIn, what do they think? Do they think B2B e-commerce businesses, the teams, are understaffed or overstaffed? And look at this, Andy. The result of our poll, our most e-commerce teams, 88% said too small. Only 12% said too large, and a whopping 0 said just the right size. So, I mean, our community clearly thinks that there's a lot to this. And, what's kind of leading into this? And, we got some interesting comments on LinkedIn too, Andy, when we asked this question. Isaiah Bollinger, SVP of distribution at Zaylab, who's been in the industry for a long time, he said B2B is under-resourced because the companies just see it as capturing existing revenue. So they have a hard time understanding why you would invest more than just enough to keep it running. So, B2B companies thinking about this as, this is not incremental revenue. This is simply a replacement of revenue for this happening in other channels. Is that the right way to think about it?
Well, I think he's partially right about this. I do think it's anchored in, they think about it as channel shift as opposed to channel lift. But I don't know if this captures all of why they do this, but I would agree with him because we just made this point that it is a function of the legacy business. They start with the world they know and extrapolate from that, which I'm constantly telling B2B companies, you've got to break that cycle. You got to start with what it is you want to create. And by the way, 3 years in the future, and then work your way back to the present. And I've said this a million times. if you start in the future and work your way back to the present versus starting in the present and working your way to the future, I assure you will come to a different conclusion. Too many B2B companies start in the present and extrapolate to the future with, ratios of employees, what kind of functionality they need to build, what kind of platforms they buy. I've run into this a lot. They're like, oh, here's what we're doing today, and this is what we need to do today with our website. I'm like, what about in 3 years? Oh, we don't know. Well, by the time you get this done, you're going to end up with a platform that you're always going to be chasing the future.
Right.
And so, yeah, I do think there is this tendency to anchor too much in what you're doing in the here and now.
Yeah, no question. Well, here's the other thing, Andy. We asked, we do a lot of surveying in our community and asking people questions and trying to understand how much, what are they thinking about different things. And so we asked a question, about roles in e-commerce and B2B. We found, this is surprising, didn't even know some of the roles. We asked the question, does your e-commerce team have a dedicated merchandiser who decides how products will be displayed on the website? In B2C, this is foundational. I had 6-7 people at PacSun doing web merchandising across my categories, doing site merchandising, search merchandising. 58% of B2B companies in our community said no, they do not have someone that does this, nor the majority of them said they don't even have plans to add those people. More than almost 50% said, hey, we don't, we don't think it's important. We're not adding them. Okay.
Well,
so you've got this, what does that cause? Well, it causes a ripple effect, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But what's your reaction, Andy?
Well, it reminds me of a survey I did when I was at Forrester, and I did it a couple of years in a row and came to the same conclusion. Maybe I should update this, but what percentage of B2B companies have a chief marketing officer? And it was like 33%, whereas in B2C, it was closer to twice that. And so it's the same idea that they don't see marketing as a digital function. They tend to have had marketing in B2B companies as a sales support function. And there aren't merchandisers as a sales support function unless they're making collateral for the sales team. There was a team that created the product catalog, and wherever that lived, who knows? Maybe it was marketing, probably not. It might have been a dedicated product catalog team. So when you're making a physical product catalog and you transfer that over to the web, who owns it? It should be marketing. And yet, in a lot of B2B companies, they don't have that function.
Exactly. And, you get B2C folks like me who come into B2B and they're like, what do you mean you don't know what a web merchandiser is? We got this comment from Emily Hansen Serrano, director of e-commerce at Taylor Corporation, which is a big B2B company. It also has B2C, and she has B2C background. She said, B2B customers expect a B2C experience. Exactly. There is an opportunity here that companies may not realize. They need some of us skilled in retail e-commerce to help them tap into that potential. Merchandising, optimization, personalization. Amen, Emily. I mean, that's right. Companies don't even realize what they're missing when they don't have a function. So again, this is another lesson learned from B2C that B2B can be applying. But Andy, we think about, okay, so we've got some, we talked about some reasons why B2B e-commerce teams might be smaller. Some of that due to the fact that leadership may not understand the importance of e-commerce, or really they think about it very differently.
That, by the way, is not only just the first one you listed, it's by far the most important one. And the reason why is because they're not used to fighting for customers hand to hand on the internet. They're used to having salespeople go out and fight hand to hand in a physical location. But again, the no CMO, the no web merchants, they don't generally, and I'm broadly speaking here, don't generally recognize that you have to have a completely different approach when you're trying to get anonymous people on the web who may or may not have heard of your product before. Think about the keyword buying. There was no equivalent for that offline. They had to learn that. They need to learn this too.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some practical reasons too, Andy, right? Why the team may not need to be as big in B2B. You got higher average order sizes, right? So $100 million B2B business may have a significantly lower number of orders to generate that 100 million versus a retailer. So fewer transactions, right? Fewer transactions means less support, right? Less customer service. etc. You also got, established relationships. In B2B, what is driving a lot of e-commerce volume? Well, it's reorders. So that's driving self-service. So again, do you need as much of a team if it's simply reorders? Lower content and brand experience requirements is another thing that in B2B. So, for example, in B2C, Andy, in the retail business, we would have teams of those merchants would be creating all kinds of immersive experiences, right? They'd be putting together videos and custom landing pages and getting people excited about the theme of looking good, if at PacSun, getting the right apparel for the party or right, set, whatever, footwear and shirt and pants. But that's different in B2B in that you don't need that same level necessarily of immersive experience. With that comes perhaps lower content brand requirements, tighter integration with sales teams, right? E-commerce back when in the consumer side, e-commerce would be in some ways a standalone business. That's the way we originally built it. And so in B2B, you've got a lot of cross-channel behavior. You've got sales teams interacting with the e-commerce site and the e-commerce site, informing the sale. And so there's a lot of back and forth. So, you could say that, hey, the physical sales team does more in a B2B sale that's facilitated. Go ahead. You have a reaction.
This is a story that cuts both ways. To the point of a moment ago, yes, there is an integration. Yes, there's an omni-channel, our least favorite word, relationship between the offline and the online. That does not mean that e-commerce is a secondary function, which Absolutely. Is, I think, the real issue. B2C companies recognize more that it's not a secondary. In fact, it might be the primary way within which you interact with your customers. B2B still has this mentality, rightly or wrongly, but increasingly wrongly, if you ask me, that the web is a secondary interaction with their clients, not a primary.
Exactly. Agree with you. Here's the other thing. You think about digital marketing and the e-commerce side and or the retail side. We're fighting for new customers. We are in all these channels. We're in Google, email, Meta, all the social channels, et cetera. So different approaches to marketing, and then more automation on the B2B side. So there are reasons why on the B2B side you might have a smaller team. But look, the cost of understaffing e-commerce can be real. If you're a B2B company and you're not optimizing, you're losing long tail revenue from self-service buyers. It's taking you longer to get products to market. I mean, e-commerce is a great way to get products to market quickly. Your conversion rates are going to suffer on your website. It's going to lead to lost sales. If you don't have merchants optimizing the experience in search, in your categories, et cetera, you're not going to deliver the customer their products quickly. And in the right products, you're going to lose market share to places like Amazon. Why is Amazon growing? Why is it $80 billion in Amazon business this year? Well, it doesn't happen by accident. They're doing a very good job at e-commerce. Lower order values. So if you're not upselling and cross-selling, accurately, without leadership, you're gonna end up with more channel conflict. I mean, these are all real costs, Andy, of understaffing. I believe, and some of them, companies don't even realize they're missing the boat on some of this. What are your thoughts?
So this is interesting because in the year 2025, we have to approach this a little bit differently, because prior to 2025, the answer was yes, humans. You need to staff these functions with more humans.
Right.
I feel like 2025 going forward might be a little bit different. Our point here is these functions have not been fully developed. Let's put it that way. The question is, are you going to be hiring humans to do this stuff, or increasingly is it going to be agentic AI that's handling some of this stuff? That's another discussion for another day. But I think our point is, whether it's humans or robots, the reality is that B2B companies have under-resourced these areas, and that needs to be fixed.
Maybe this is another Friday 15, Andy, where we dive in on some of these. And can agentic AI actually do some of those functions? So maybe B2B e-commerce has got it right, and the organizations can stay small and use agentic AI to solve this, and everybody's more efficient. And then B2B is like setting the bar for B2C. We'll see.
So you say that B2B is actually accidentally ahead of the curve on this one by understaffing and under-resourcing? Well, you know what? I'll leave you this thought. you and I have talked about this a little bit. I don't know if we talk about it on Friday 15 or not, but I'm increasingly seeing companies, and some of it's real and some of it's definitely not. I mean, increasingly see companies that are putting agentic AI people-ish in their org charts. And they're saying we're staffing this merchandising function with one person and 3 agent AIs. And you know what? In the past, that might have been 4 people. Who knows? Maybe it's 1 person and 3 agents. But the reality is in B2B, it's usually just 1 person. And that's too few.
All right. Well, we're way past our Friday 15 today, Andy. We got to go to our announcements. Friday 15 is brought to you by Master B2B Nexus, your personal D2B digital lifeline. We provide expert advice exclusively for B2B e-com execs. This is a bespoke paid service for practitioners only. You can access our knowledge through e-commerce experts, facilitated peer networking. And yes, Ahmed, we do this weekly. Thank you for your question. Absolutely. Premium B2B e-commerce research, content, etc. So check it out. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and then look for Nexus, and you can find more information. You can also sign up for our forum, which has hundreds and hundreds of members in it. It is growing every day. Conversations happening every day. Practitioners only, and it is free for practitioners. So come on to masterb2b.com and look for forum and sign up. And finally, want to remind everyone that our Friday 15 is available via podcast on your favorite podcast service. Go ahead and search for Master B2B Friday 15, and you will find us. Andy, another great session, and we'll talk maybe more about this next week. Any final words on our Friday 20 plus today?
No.
Wow, impressive. All right, folks, we will see you next week on our next Friday 15. Thanks for joining.